What's it like to be blown up?
If it's like C4, it's almost like a smack, like a karate chop.
I'm Ryan Gresham, and this is Gun Talk Nation. This Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by RCBS, SecureIt, Smith & Wesson, BuildBox, CZ USA, EOTECH, Wheeler, Range Ready, and Franklin Armory. Welcome into Gun Talk Nation. I'm your host, Ryan Gresham, and with us today, Josh Kinser. Welcome in, man.
How's it going, man?
So I'm going to kick this off because it was kind of funny. I told you we like to, and Josh works with SecureIt, so we'll get into that too. But I do a little research on everybody, like what would be fun to talk about, and what should we talk about? So
God, what have you found?
So if I Google you, one of the first things I see is the man that's been blown up 8 times. So I think we have to start there. Of like, wait a minute. And I kind of read a little bit of it. So maybe tell people what's the explanation here of the man that's been blown up 8 times.
I guess somehow I became kind of a connoisseur of being blown up, which it is very different once you get hit with a anti-tank mine or it's more C4 and things like that versus like ammonium nitrate. And I kind of joke around that I only got one explosion left. If we were talking about cats, right? So if I've only got 9 lives, but the first deployment in Iraq, we did see some IEDs that weren't really. That was the 2004 2005 era, and then I was back in 2006, and then that's where the combat had all kind of changed, and it was just massive amounts of IEDs, and
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I mean, I've got some cuts, scrapes, bangs, and bruises. I've had some surgeries to repair some things, but it's just it only takes one.
Yeah.
But I just somehow skated around the edges on those couple. I always the potentially worst one was one that didn't go off. And
Really?
that was a house that was rigged to blow. And I say that this is honestly it's crazy, but it's the first time I ever felt God talking to me.
Really?
And the
Tell me
way
about
that
that.
God was talking to me was the most annoying, horrible sound just in my ear telling me something was wrong.
Really?
And we were, yeah, I'll try to keep this quick, but uh, we were coming up and we were pushing into what had been transformed into ISIS at this time, the beginning of ISIS. And we already had one little thing where we took some issues where a couple of us got chlorine gassed, right? A sniper's up on the hill. He shoots at us. It's kind of weird. Our team goes and we're kicking in the door. Everybody kind of gets knocked out because they had caught chlorine and sulfur in the corner on fire. Stuffed towels jumped out the window just to get us. Wasn't a very effective, but it was slowing us down.
So you weren't
So
passing out, but kind of you were
it knocked
impeded.
me out.
Oh, did it?
I was the third guy on the stack, and I watched my 2 guys go down, and then but there were people right behind us. It it was just meant, looking back, it was meant to slow us down because they were trying to escape out of this area. So we had done some things that had probably been a little bit predictable. We knew that the command structure was going to take a multi-level house. ISIS knew that as well. So we come into this house. As soon as we come in, it's this courtyard, and there's a car bomb, right? There's wires hanging out, but it's like a car bomb that you would see like that Wile E. Coyote made.
Like an obvious car bomb. It wasn't
There's an
secretive.
anvil on the top of it, and so we back up. We have to send EOD, and they're like, "There's wires going to nothing." So then we get a little bit further down the sidewalk. We see wires. We're backing up.
Mm.
We pull back, and so we had teams go in and clear the house, and everybody was like, "Okay, it's clear, it's clear." And I was just like, man, something. I mean, that's when I was just like, this is not right. This is not right. And I kept complaining. And one of my leaders was like, well, take a team and do this. And so we split up. we had the guys going around the outside at the time, and I'm in there with a fister, so somebody that calls artillery, and unfortunately, he just passed away a couple of weeks ago. But I've got Canales with me, and we come into this big, huge room. This house is huge, and there's prayer rugs and rugs. They're not like they're just stacked on top of each other, crisscross. Like this, I mean, this is a big room. Like, but there's not an inch of this floor it's not covered by rugs.
Yeah.
We're walking by it and we're looking, and I'm like, "Have you ever seen this many rugs in a room?"
It sounds like one of those goofy little traps you see in the woods where you dig a hole.
It was,
and you
and then
cover it
one
up.
of us, yep, one of us stepped on something and it went, and there was, so we pulled the rugs up, and there was the thinnest plywood you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And what the plywood had broken over, because it was so thin, it was just shavings over one of these cords. So we start pulling this cord, and we look up, and this cord's running to a refrigerator standing up and a refrigerator laid down on the main weight-bearing wall underneath the steps. Um, and at that point, we already have a team on the roof, like starting to pull security. So I'm like, you got to go get these guys down. And in that situation, you don't want to start yelling because the enemy could be waiting for more people to, you just don't know.
Yeah.
So Canales runs up and he's getting those guys down. So I start following. I've got one cord that goes there, and then there's this hidden room. And I go into this room, and there's 55-gallon drums, and I mean, there's just, I mean, it's stuff. Of course, 24 was on. You always had that timer that was on. And I look, and there's like a two-way radio handheld, and I'm seeing numbers flash on it. So I'm like, oh crap, this is a time bomb, right? That's what Jack Bauer would have had to face.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm like, now we do, and I'm yelling, landslide, landslide means everybody get out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the echoes, they can't hear me. So two guys are coming to help me thinking I'd found some guy in a closet. We all get out of the house, doesn't blow.
Yeah.
There were some weird things later on where a radio got turned on back inside the house. We had EOD come, they pulled the detonating device, and
So there were explosives in the
there were
floor or in the
explosives.
fridge.
Long story short, these were Russian blasting caps and Russian devices that were bad. We didn't find this out for about 2-3 weeks later, but the EOD, Explosives Ordnance Disposal, was like, why you guys didn't die?
Wow.
These were bad blasting caps. It's like a 1 in 10,000 defect. So luckily, some dude had drank too much vodka the night before on the Russian, manufacturing firing line.
Yeah.
And it was just a bad blasting cap.
Unreal.
So it was all set up on relays, and it was a very complicated. But they ended up blowing up the whole house and whatnot. But
yeah,
that would have killed. We probably would have lost 30, 40 guys had that gone off, because it would have collapsed the entire house on top of us.
So they were trying to get you guys in there and get a bunch of people in there, huh?
And they did. They almost got there, but.
What's it like to be blown up?
If it's like C4, it's almost like a smack, like a karate chop. I mean, it's a, and so
High
if you
velocity.
look at, and you look at the scale of like that C4 is like a cutting. Like, so if we want to cut a bridge, we want to cut concrete, we want to use C4. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the slower exploding things like ammonium nitrate. It's almost like a plasma moving through your body.
Really?
It's not a plasma. I'm not saying that, but it's like you feel it. It messes up your inside sometimes. We had other guys that, I know one instance, not of my unit, but it was an EOD out of Bakaba. The bomb went off. The guys were completely fine. They were protected from the shrapnel, but died from internal injuries a couple hours later. It ruptured, their internal organs. It's a strange feeling. I mean, it's very invasive, and I mean, you feel it kind of come through you. It doesn't feel good, but
No,
I don't want to get blown up again.
Yes, man.
But yeah, it's very different between the two.
So, what was your job over there? You were just like in the just Army? And...
Yeah, I was a reconnaissance scout, a Cav scout,
Okay.
light guy, not an armored, and was with the 1st Infantry Division the first time, 82nd Airborne the second time.
Yeah.
Jeez. But it was, I always joke, the first deployment, there was a lot of fighting, but it was all bath party and, hey, you shoot at us, we'll shoot at you. And it's just kind of like back and forth. A lot of raids going after the deck of cards guys. And then it was different the second time around. We were in the middle of a civil war. And they went to more effective, 155 rounds, and they can make ammonium nitrate out of fertilizer in a bathtub.
Yeah.
And those are very effective. And you take that, some ball bearings and screws and nuts and bolts and whatever, you tape it around, and you got yourself a pretty fancy claymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, this episode we're recording right now will be out right around Veterans Day, so this is kind of appropriate timing to be talking about it. Why don't we do this? I want to talk about. Okay. We'll get into some gun stuff since this is Gun Talk Nation. Maybe kind of your background with guns, and then maybe a little bit in the military and after, and all that stuff. But we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Save on CZ firearms with the CZ Fall Rebate. Save on CZ firearms with the CZ Fall Rebate. Receive up to a $100 rebate on... Save on CZ firearms with the CZ Fall Rebate. Receive up to a $100 rebate on select CZ firearms from now through December 31st. Learn more about the CZ Fall Rebate at cz-usa.com. You know that Silencer Central makes it easy to buy silencers, but they also have their whole line of Banish suppressors, and the newest one is the Banish Speed K TI. TI for titanium. Extremely lightweight and compact. This is a really cool ultra compact 223-556 dedicated silencer. Weighs only 8.6 ounces. It's 4 inches long, and it has controlled flow technology. We have used this on the range. We've been impressed at how light it is, doesn't change the weight and balance of the gun, and also still very quiet. The Banish Speed K TI from Silencer Central. You know EOTECH for high-quality optics, but here's a new one, the EOTECH HWS EXP S3 DCR. I know that's a lot of letters, but what does DCR mean? Danger Close Reticle. Provides fast and accurate shots at typical distances, but also an effective close combat aiming point. It's kind of 2 reticles in one, which is great for an optic like this. You can learn more at eotechinc.com. Range Ready is where we run our classes, rangereadystudios.com. So go over there to check out the classes and events that we have going on. These things go fast. Another little known thing about Range Ready is we will provide you a pistol if you need one for running a class, or even an AR. But there's no charge for that. We don't rent you a gun and there's an upcharge. It's just available for your use. So it's a pretty cool deal. Go check it out, rangereadystudios.com. Franklin Armory binary triggers just got an upgrade. The new AR Elite trigger. Of course, the binary firing system is a 3-position trigger. You can safe, you can fire it semi-auto, but in the 3rd position, it fires 1 round on pull and 1 round on release. Now, the new AR Elite trigger comes with premium features, including interchangeable trigger bows. So you can choose between a curved trigger or a straight flat face trigger. Also easy to install, straight, smooth trigger pull, 4.5 pounds plus or minus a half pound. Positive reset. So go check it out, franklinarmory.com. So Josh, did you have a background in gun shooting before being in the military? I mean, how did you get into it?
I grew up in the mountains in Southwest Virginia. And so, my first gun was I think I got it when I was 11. It was one of those 20 gauge single shot, Rossies.
Yep.
No, I'm sorry. Because it was compared, it would have been New England Firearms. That's right. With like the oiled thing. God, that thing kicked. And, that was
one single shot, single barrel.
I don't know if I have a gun today that kicks as bad as those single action, shotguns.
There's nothing to absorb it. It's just straight into your shoulder. And especially if you're an 11-year-old kid and a boy, you're not going to say anything because you want to be hunting, you want to be shooting. And did you use that for birds or deer? What did you use it for?
Squirrel.
Squirrels. Okay.
Oh, I loved hunting squirrel.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and you're pointing up. It's
Even worse. Yeah.
it'll whack you off pretty bad. Of course, I mean, we used to run around the woods with BB guns and pellet rifles. We had the Crossmans, and we would do things like we'd make our own shotguns. So you put 3 pellets down and then put a little piece of tissue paper in and then pump it up above the factory recommended 40, 50 times, but it says don't go past 10.
Right.
But and I probably spent, because Virginia is a little bit different. There's a very limited gun season for deer. So if you wanted to, you had to bow hunt. And so I shot, archery more than anything.
Yeah.
I could do that in my backyard, and then that opened up a lot more hunting to me. But my first rifle was a Marlin 30-30 lever action.
Like a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Which now those guns are crazy. It's like I saw them, they come back out and they want $1,500. It's like, I think I paid 180 for mine at the time,
Yeah. Lever guns have gone wild lately. I mean,
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Marlin was unobtainium for 2 or 3, 4 years because of all the stuff changing over. And then now they're making them, but they can't make enough of them. And when Ruger bought Marlin, they took about 2 years to get it back up and running. And they told me, they said, we're going to get it right. It's going to be a while. And then they also said, once they launched that very first Marlin, they said, we're not going to be able to make enough. Like, I'm just telling you, we have more models planned, but it's just, there's going to be a wait list for a while. And it's not on purpose. They're not like, oh, we're going to get these people, we're going to jack up the prices. Those are not fast guns to manufacture.
No. And they're making them in 45-70 primarily, right? And
that was the first one. And now they're making them in 30-30 and some other stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, you could have just bought one and then sold it down the road. I mean, it's like every, I told somebody this the other day, and I can get crushed for it, but lever actions are the new 6.5 Creedmoor. Like,
well, they're the hotness right now.
Yeah,
I know.
It's wild. I mean, to something of 45-70 is a great round. It's a very universal, but in today's ballistics, that's not what you would to see as popular as it is, and it is. I mean,
well, it's totally opposite of like a 6.5 Creedmoor, right? I mean, we're 6.5 or even 6 Creedmoor. All these are longer bullets. Flying not necessarily flatter, but bucking the wind better. And a 45-70 is absolutely not that. It's a Winnebago going down. There's no streamlinedness at all.
Yeah, it's I've got I still have a couple lever actions. I do want a Henry. I'd like one of those, but it's wild. And I mean, you think about, like, when I was growing up hunting, I mean, there was no such thing as lever revolution yet. You still were using the rounded tips, and I'm not sure when lever revolution even came out, but it was way past my high school days. That's for sure.
You were probably busy getting blown up when it came out, something like that. You don't remember it because you had a concussion at that time.
That's probably right. It was. Seeing Tweety birds.
That did change the game, though. I mean, pointed bullets. I mean, now you've got lever guns that are 200-yard, 250-yard lever guns, which is kind of wild. But the tactical lever guns is bringing in a little bit new life to it. And I mean, I think people always love the pistol caliber lever guns. And actually, Rossi kind of reintroduced their lever guns, and they're doing a pretty nice job too. So everybody's getting in on the action.
It was funny. My daughters, I don't let them play a ton of video games, but they do play some Fortnite every once in a while. And they got all excited and were yelling, like, "Dad, look at this cool new gun." And it was a lever action shotgun that they had. And they thought that was the coolest thing without even having any, And it was a little bit later. They were like, "Here's another cool gun." And I was like, "Oh, it's an Uzi." And they were like, "No, it's it's something SMG." And I was like, "No, it's not. That's an Uzi. I grew up in the 80s. I know it.
I can tell you.
I've seen Miami Vice. That is an Uzi."
I'll tell you what a MAC-10 is too, kid. Shut up.
Yeah, come on.
So I'm assuming that you carried an M4 when you were overseas, huh?
Correct. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Optics or no optics on it?
No, I went back and forth. I did have one set up that I preferred an EOTech when I was doing close quarter stuff.
Yeah.
But I did use an ACOG in other
Mm-hmm.
situations. That was, some of the first versions of those. And the ACOG is just a fantastic, it doesn't serve every purpose, but that extra 3 to 4 times magnification in some of those
Mm-hmm.
situations is pretty nice.
Yeah.
But
It's super
being
simple. It's
mhm,
super rugged. And
very
and
rugged.
and nothing. Yeah. Give it to a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds in overseas and see if you can break it. That's a good
I,
test market.
I mean, you think about, I joke about like, when sometimes you travel or whatever, your scope gets knocked off. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've literally been blown up, rolled over, gotten up, and returned accurate fire with an ACOG.
Yeah.
Like, and then sometimes I'll be hunting and my rifle will fall like this. I'm like, oh, it's off 8 inches. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you see that difference. And the ACOG it was a pretty badass little piece of equipment to add on there.
And like you said, a fixed 3 or 3.5 power, depending on which model you got on it.
Mhm.
You can do a lot with 3 power. I mean,
Mhm.
people here on a shooting range will say, "Well, gosh, you can't hit anything past 200 yards with that." I'm like, I beg to differ. You can hit stuff,
Yeah.
and probably in that situation, it's actually nice not having any adjustability on magnification. Like, keep it
Mhm.
simple, keep it rugged. What do
Well,
you think?
I always talked about this when I was with Swagger. I talked about this a little bit, and the enemy of a traditional bipod or laying prone is the grass, and that's the same in combat or hunting. And we had multiple instances where we needed a machine gun, a saw, or a 240 return fire, and you're like, crap, we can't. The grass is too high, or the
Mm-hmm.
terrain doesn't allow it, and so. I don't know, everybody likes to go to the range and talk about what they can do in the prone, but in combat, that's not, there's a lot of shoot, move, communicate, and you're leaning up against a building, you're doing whatever it is. And sometimes, even though we want to always say aim small, miss small, it's an area target that you know, I would love to hit the guy in the head, but if I hit him in the chest, it could stop him from firing RPG at me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Minute of
Like,
bad guy is still pretty good.
yeah, yeah, and so, um, you know, the fixed power 10 by or 15 time scope that a sniper would use is a great tool, but that sniper's got to be stationary and move a lot less than a lot of times us on the ground. And if you're going back and forth, it's just a
Yeah.
different game. It's a different
Yeah,
game.
absolutely. You don't want to be caught like you do when you're deer hunting when the
Mhm.
magnification's turned all the way up and you're
Yeah.
going, where the hell is it?
Where'd he go? Which
Yeah,
which,
where'd
which
he
deer
go?
is it? And
That's no
is it the one
good.
facing left?
That's no good, man.
But
Um,
and no batteries needed for the ACOG too. This isn't an ACOG.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, I was impressed with it.
yeah, that's cool. So all right, so I want to talk about SecureIt. We've been using your stuff around here. We've had a lot of fun with it. Everybody who walks in asks us what it is because it's kind of eye-catching. Have like the quad boxes and stuff like that. Why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break, and then when we come
Okay.
back, we'll give people all the lowdown and why they need to take a look. Modular safes from SnapSafe offer all the security of a traditional welded safe, but with the benefit of being able to place them anywhere in your home or business without professional movers. Their 2300-degree fire protection offers peace of mind knowing firearms, jewelry, currency, and valuable documents are protected from fire and theft. Visit snapsafe.com to see all of SnapSafe's security solutions. The new Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0 bridges the gap between a gun that's easy to carry and one that's easy to shoot. Small and lightweight at only 9.8 ounces, but plenty of .380 auto with 10 and 12 round magazines. See the new Bodyguard at smith-wesson.com. Enter to win the Ultimate Builder Giveaway presented by BuildBox. Here's your chance to win from over 100 incredible prizes from top brands like Caldwell, Real Avid, Wheeler Tools, Brownells, Aero Precision, Timney Triggers, Ballistic Advantage, EOTECH, and Tipton. and even more. You can also win guns built on the show. Don't miss out. Visit BuildBoxTV.com to enter and gear up for your next build. SecureItGunStorage.com. We talk about SecureIt because they make just really cool products, and we have a bunch of them here. We have the lockers, we have some of their agile safes, and when people come into Gun Talk headquarters, we often get that question of like, ooh, what's these? They're all stacked up, and it's like a cool wall of storage for your guns and your gear, but they do a good job of providing a lot of different options for storing your goods, gun walls, accessories, and you can kind of customize the configuration inside to really maximize the space for what you want it to work for. So you can learn more over at SecureItGunStorage.com. Upgrade your workbench with Wheeler tools. Wheeler tools are specifically designed for the job. Fat wrenches, AR tools, gunsmithing tools, and scope mounting kits make the job easier, and you know it's done right. Check out complete armorer's kits, purpose-built screwdriver sets, or even scope rings. WheelerTools.com. That's WheelerTools.com. So yeah, Josh, I'd seen and heard about SecureIt over the years, and then we started working with you guys. I can't even remember how it came about, and I was like, wait a minute. Tell me more about this. Okay, yeah, like the metal lockers that you see in an armory, that kind of look and feel. But I mean, how do you describe it? I mean, because you have more products than just that, but how do you describe it to people?
You've got to start like with how SecureIt Tactical and SecureIt Gun Storage got started would be there's the military police lockers, right? That are and I want to say something too. It's crazy because like those things are expensive. Like we're not talking about the safes you have, but those lockers are expensive. And people are like, "Oh, I could go to Home Depot and get 800." Like you probably don't need one of these military lockers because their shelf capacity is 900 pounds a shelf. Like they're made to hold artillery rounds and all this other stuff. Like right, but if that's what you want, that's what that's the difference. They're made to hold armament and have it in a way. In addition to that, there's a lot of armories and things that are like we're doing full on armories for a lot of Marine, Army bases, police, evidence rooms for district attorneys and things like that. So you have that kind of really high performance, heavy stuff, and then it transfers over into more of the civilian line, the agile quad like you all have. And for me, what I love about that is you have the modularity and true modularity, because you'll have other safe companies be like, oh, this is modular. It's like, well, that's not the definition of modular. Modular is adding pieces, right? So you start here and you add those, and then the customization, the ability to customize and store how you want straight line access. Because when you hear this stuff about a 48 gun safe, I mean, let's be real honest, it's 48 broom handles.
Right.
I mean, scopes,
nothing with a big scope on it, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so what we want to have designed is the ability, straight line access. You pull, if you've got a shorter one, you got an SBR, well, you can stack another one right on top of it. Things change, you move it around. And so, I think there's a multitude of things that you can do within that is really unique. And the ability to, I mean, we can delve into this a little bit, but fire ratings are just it's made up crap. There's never been a military that has ever said what's the fire rating on this, because no matter what the fire rating of the safe is, if we're saying it gets to this, what about your springs? What about the plastic and the polymer and the trigger and all these things? They're gonna melt before any of this stuff happens. And the company that pushes this the most is the company that also gave away backdoor access codes and is owned by anti-gun politicians.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Owned by venture capital that donates to anti-gun politicians.
Right. Well, and when I think of you guys, what I think of is really efficient ways to organize your storage inside your gun safe or your gun cabinet. Because you have the system, which is what's the system called?
Cradle Grid.
Cradle Grid, yeah, which is really cool. All these different accessories and ways to, hang your guns and store more things behind the guns, which it's a good, efficient use of space. And of course, it's a secure way to lock everything up and keep it secure. To me, it's a little bit different animal than maybe what people think of as a traditional gun safe, even though it does have a lot of those functions. It's just a little bit different animal to me. They're just kind of neat. Is there a particular one or a particular category that's the most popular for you guys?
It's the Agile line for sure. And
Okay.
and I tell you, like, I'll give you an example. When I started working, I love our Answer Safe. The Answer 12, it opens up.
Yeah.
It's really cool, but it weighs, 400 pounds.
Yeah.
And so to ship that on freight, that's going to be another $400, 450. And then you're going to get charged $125 lift gate and $85 for being in residential. And again, that's not us. That's going to be your freight company. And that's going to get it to your garage. I had to pay $600 to get this safe and another one moved into, bedrooms and whatnot. And
Look, I'm glad you're honest about that. Like, look, probably, and the good news is for anybody listening, you're probably not buying like a gun safe each year. I mean, it's probably a purchase that is maybe once or maybe once every, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. But this doesn't happen all the time, but that is the reality. They're heavy, and to move them into the right spot, it costs money. Like every single time I've moved, like we moved offices, I'm paying a safe mover guy. Cause I'm like, I'm not trying to move 1,000-pound safe. And it's like $500, $400 per safe.
They get left behind all the time because it's cheaper to buy a new safe than it is to move it, especially if you're going across country. And so the Agile is designed for shipping, right? So that's our Answer line. And those are cool. They're really great. But the Answer folds down because when you get into shipping, it isn't just weight, it's dimensions.
Yeah,
so
how much volume?
Yeah, you get all kinds of trouble with dimensions. And so it's designed to show up flat, and it's going to cost like $80, and you can throw it on your shoulder, 100 pounds. Maybe you get 2 people to carry it upstairs, and you can hide it in your closet. You can put it together wherever. And I mean, other than the door, I had to help my 8-year-old daughter, but she put it together herself. I mean, she couldn't hold the door. The door is heavy.
Yeah.
And it's just a different beast because the heavier big safes, this one's here. Like what are you going to do?
Semi-permanent. Yeah.
It's there. And, for us, like at the ranch, I mean, we're moving some things around. We took them all down and we had to do some, no problem. That is our number one. I think what people get the most excited about are the gun walls and the building, like the gun rooms and doing that.
That's
and
how
you
these
talked
days.
about, you talked about it's the same cradle grid, but if you want to put a couple that are vertical and then you got one you want to show off, you just hang that horizontal and you can really turn it into an eye-catching,
Yeah, I mean, we use it here in our set and in our gun room and workbench and stuff. So we'll have little cubbies for little small parts, and we'll have some pistol hangers, and then some vertical rifle hangers. And then I like you were kind of mentioning, if you have like an AR, a little carbine that has an adjustable stock, when you collapse that thing down, it's pretty short. So you can put things under it or above it or whatever, and you can really configure. It's not a one size fits all, which doesn't work in hats or gun safes or shirts or anything else. I mean, so it's totally configurable.
Our pistol racks. That's what I mean. I know it's such a small piece, but then the handles are out. I'm trying to do this on a radio show, but everybody knows those little rubber coated pistol things that you would get that you put on top of your regular safe, and then you pull one pistol out and the whole thing falls down, and then you're pulling all your pistols out from your they've scratched up your scopes. And but this it has the handle out, so you can I think our big one holds 11, so I've got 11 or I can put suppressors there and have it. It's such an efficient use of space that it just, I love it. It's probably one of our smallest little pieces, but that's my favorite accessory.
Is that something? So you guys, I assume, are always kind of like developing accessories that work with the Cradle Grid, because that's like a specific to you guys, the Cradle Grid, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. What you kind of mentioned I wasn't going to really get into it, but since you brought it
Go
up,
for it.
the whole code thing, just in case, I guess it seems like something that people keep bringing up because it's been
Dude.
brought to their attention. I mean, I'll let you have the floor as far as what's the policy for SecureIt, because you guys have electronic keypads. How does that work?
It's wild because I used to always say this. I'll give this as an example. I used to work for Military Warriors Support Foundation. Actually, I was on a radio show with your dad, I don't know, 14 years ago, 15 years ago. Like, it was
Yeah.
ridiculous. But everybody thought that we were Wounded Warrior Project. Oh, well, you're part of the Wounded. I'm like, hell no. Like, I don't go to a cancer thing. Oh, you guys must be part of the Red Cross. But it was it was the mentality. And everybody thinks that because Liberty did that every safe company does. And, so we're talking now, this happened before I worked at SecureIt, October of last year. Basically, this guy gets accused of something of January 6th, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
FBI, ATF show up. They have warrants for some things. They don't have a warrant for the safe. I'm putting the story. Basically, they just called Liberty, and Liberty's like, yeah, well, we got these backdoor access codes. Here, just open the safe up. and so you think about that, when you're turning in your warranty, not only is this backdoor access code for your safe, it's attached to your address. And that takes time, effort, manpower, and money to maintain and store those access codes. And so I can't make a Facebook post hard. I mean, it's gotten better, but I mean, still, I'll make a post or something and be like, you guys have backdoor access codes? Like, no, we don't store, maintain, we don't have them.
It doesn't exist.
You'll hear people say, oh, the FBI came. They can come all they want. We don't have them because we don't store them. We don't want that juju. On our safes, and it'll be with the new Fastbox line, we'll have biometrics on them as well. But we have keyed entry. So you put a code in. We have fingerprint. And then our back door is we have manual keys that we give you that you can go hide wherever and if something happens that you need to get in, you put that key in and you turn it like you're Andy Griffith letting Otis out of the cell. and there's thousands of those, right? You can't have one that's going to go around and do that.
Oh my gosh, we have a bunch of your stuff here. We have it looks like a freaking jail cell warden with 30 keys on a keychain. It would look like a vice principal of a high school or something. It's crazy.
And so that to me, you can listen to stuff, Tom. I mean, I'm not saying that every safe company does that, but we have not really been able to find safe companies that call it out, that don't do it. Yeah. And, I can't understand the reasoning behind it. I don't know. And then if you look at the press release that was put out about it, like, it was even worse than giving the codes out. You can go read that for yourself. Again, used to be a great American company. Got bought up by venture capital. Go look at who's running that company now.
It's been bought and sold several times. Yeah.
Essential oils is their main, I say it all the time. I mean, their main product is they were in the essential oil business and they wanted to buy gun safes and tell you how much of a fire rating you need and how they're going to give out those backdoor access codes. But we don't want anything to do with those codes. We don't want to maintain them. We don't,
Good. I'm glad we get it cleared up because I mean, apparently it's still one of those things that you just can't escape it. And it's funny how in our world, there'll be that thing that keeps coming up that's from years ago. And you're like, we're still talking about this?
I get on YouTube. It's funny because I went up, I'm good friends with the guys at Eastman's and I went to go do a podcast with Ike. And he's like, hey, I got Josh. He's now with SecureIt, if you remember. And he's like, oh, they don't store access codes, do they? That's the first question, that Guy Eastman had. And,
Jeez.
we talked about it, but I mean, it's like, it's, there's probably thousands of YouTube videos out there about this one event. It's wild.
I wonder how much people use that as an excuse to not actually purchase a gun safe. It's like a BS excuse because, I mean, to me, I think everybody would like to have a gun safe. I know that sometimes you're like, man, those are not cheap, and it's kind of a big purchase, but it's kind of another reason, right? If people, I mean, number one, protection of your goods, organization of your goods, locking it up not only from the burglars, but from your kids or your kids' friends, locking it up from, I don't know, some unnecessary, getting swatted, and they go, what's in there? I don't know, go find a warrant. Like, I don't, I have nothing to tell you. Like, there's just so many reasons to have a gun safe. Do you guys have any idea how many gun owners do or don't own a gun safe?
I don't. That would be tough to really get a handle on. I think you can see how it's kind of changing and shifting a little bit. And I mean, I think to your point, there's a multitude of reasons to have gun safes. Probably for me, yeah, theft's important to me. Like, if my whole house burns down, my I got bigger problems. Like, and it's going to fry everything. I mean, you can see most of the time it's going to be ash that's left in any fire safe, no matter. And again, fire ratings for houses are regulated. For safes, they're not. They're not they're just, they're in house. For me, it's keeping them away from my kids and their friends.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it's also keeping them organized, and, it's a deterrent because you and I know the right person can get it. I mean, the right person can get into a bank vault.
Oh yeah. I mean, even the biggest, baddest, awesomest gun safe, and if you ask any gun safe company, they'll say, no, you can break into it. You can cut it open with a plasma torch or whatever the heck it is. It's designed to make it more difficult and to slow them down. But given enough time, they can get in.
But it's always funny because when we talk about fire ratings or theft, right? So this is sitting right here. You can see I've got windows right here in my office. Like, this is drywall all around me. So is the drywall now make me fire resistant? I mean, because that's all it is. It's just sheetrock that's and then the same thing, somebody can break right through this window. Super easy.
Doors and windows only keep out the honest people.
And you've seen, I don't know if you've ever watched these videos. I mean, how many of these front doors can be kicked in simply because the locks have these tiny screws, and you solve some of that by using a larger screw or longer screw. But for me, it's organization, keeping everything right there, keeping it, because what's my alternative? Stuffing them under the bed?
Well, and that's the other thing, right? So, I mean, I remember times people keeping guns in attics, not climate controlled. I know, I know, but people do it, man. Or they're stuffed under a bed, or they're in a closet and they're stacked on top of each other. And maybe it doesn't matter if it's just some AR that it's not a pretty gun, it's just a working gun. But if you got any pretty guns and you don't want them to get scratched up or banged up or bang your scope, and now it's not sighted in, perhaps, there's just keeping them organized, and they're not just piled up. I mean, and I'm not even like the inherently super OCD organized guy, but it is nice to go, I know where everything is. It's lined up. It's not stacked up and piled up,
Yeah. And your gear, because I've got in this safe, I've got camera equipment. I've got, binos. I've got passports. I've got these things in there a way that if somebody does break in our house, they got a timeline from the alarm going off.
Yeah.
And so, there's just it's just a bit of levity. Now we've got what we call a true safe. It's a concrete, I mean, it's like a vault, but it's, I mean, if you need that, we have it. It's 1,200 pounds. And some people do. If you were storing diamonds and gold bars, then the Agile is not for you. If you're storing some cool tactical stuff, yeah, that is for you.
Yeah.
But the True Safe is what you need if you're storing, you know, I don't have any bags of diamonds, but
Well, everybody, if you're listening to this, go check them out, SecureItGunStorage.com. I was just poking around, and it's fun looking at all the pictures of gun rooms and what can be done there. It just automatically gives you ideas, and you're like, oh, man, I'm going to have to you got a basement or a garage or something. Even if it's just one little wall above your workbench, it's just a cool way to do it. And I guess I should probably say this, like, obviously, this is different from like pegboard, where a pegboard, you can't hang anything heavy on pegboard.
Right.
But these are metal walls that you mount into studs.
Yeah, and they lock in and can hold heavy, you know, some of these rifles we got coming out now. I mean, they're, you know, some of these PRS guns. They're,
Oh gosh,
what that Ruger Precision
pounds.
is, Jesus. I mean, the 300 Win Mag, I think it's 18 pounds without ammo and a scope.
Yeah.
I might have that wrong, but so you said something in the email that you were thinking about asking. I'll ask you first, but
Okay.
you got a new favorite cartridge?
Well, we were just discussing this morning, and I'm a ballistic nerd guy. I like the new cartridge stuff, and then I also admit that a lot of times there's probably not a need for it, but I don't let that get in the way of buying something new. One thing I haven't messed around with much that I'm about to do a project to convert a gun. I haven't messed around with much in the way of 6mm Creedmoor, and then they have the different ones, 6 Arc and 6 GT, and all this stuff. I haven't messed around with it much because I'm maybe getting ready to dabble in the NRL stuff, and I know what it's gonna be fun, right? There's gonna be low recoil. You're gonna be able to watch the scope and see your hits and your misses and all that. But the plan is I'm gonna take a 308 and on purpose for some content, we're gonna rebarrel it to a 6 Creedmoor and play with that. So that's the newest one that I'm getting ready to play with. I know there's other new stuff coming out. I mean, I've shot the PRCs, and those work pretty well when you use the right bullets with them. What about you?
I've kind of gotten to where, you know, prior to this, I'm like, I'm going to short barrels, right? Like, so I've rekindled my love for the 308 because it doesn't, I don't lose the velocity, right? Because I used to, you know, coming from the military, I was like, I don't want to mess with 308. God, you know. However, I did some hunts with the Weatherby guys, and I was talking with Luke and Tyler.
Yep.
And I wanted to buy that 6.5 by 300. And they were like, hey, man, cool, you know, but that's going to be a 9 lug. We designed the 6.5 RPM to still be the smaller, you know, to fit in the smaller receiver. And wow, I love it. Like, you know, it is a longer barrel, but I have two Mark Vs of theirs, both in 6.5 RPM.
Yeah.
And she's now 13, but my daughter at 11 started using it because, you know, she wanted to take some longer. And then the younger ones were using the 6.5 Creedmoor. And I'm like, honey, you got to step up. Like, you got the 2 little ones. And I mean, she doesn't mind the recoil of it at all. Like, and these are light rifles. I mean,
are you shooting it suppressed?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay, good.
We shoot suppressed nonstop now. I mean, I don't even know how I'd shot without it, but that has been a favorite of mine.
I think my new advice for people, Josh, is your next gun should be a suppressor.
Yeah.
Like, just look, you probably have enough guns. If you're listening to this show, you probably have plenty of guns. Your next gun should be a suppressor. You should have a suppressor on most things.
We showed up somewhere for a hunt, and my daughter was like, they don't use suppressors? And I'm like, shh, they're people too, honey, you know, but
it's not wrong, it's just different.
The other thing is I have a rekindled, I always loved the 270. When I grew up, I read all the Jack O'Connor stories in Sports Afield, and I had this old Remington 700 that was stainless barrel. It's a oh my God, I haven't bought a 700 so long. So it's the ADL, the nicer. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, and it was under the factory trigger recall.
Okay.
And I never sent it back. And Remington was going through like a mess at that time. It was like coming from the Freedom Group, and then it was
Oh gosh.
as
Yeah.
it was kind of going. So I was like, well, I wouldn't mind to shoot this again. And I took it in. The gunsmith was like, do you really want to send it back to them? They're kind of dissolving. He's like, why don't you put this Trigger Tech, the two stage? Which one is that one? The two stage. It's like the diamond.
Okay.
And holy crap.
Yeah.
Like that is such a different trigger.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think upgrading a trigger is probably one of the best things you can do to any rifle to just improve your experience and your shooting and all that stuff. Now, I mean, probably these days it's not like it used to be. I mean, more factory guns are coming with pretty good
Right.
triggers.
Right.
I mean, the Savages have pretty good triggers. The Ruger Americans have pretty good triggers. But kind of if you have a gun that's maybe, I don't know, 10 years or older, it's very possible that the trigger's not great. And to swap it out with a Trigger Tech or a Timney or something like that, it's not very hard to do. And it's just it gives new life to a gun.
and I love Timney. Don't get me wrong. I love Geissele. All of them have made major upgrades. The Trigger Tech Diamond, that two stage, was a different pull that I really liked. And for that rifle, it just fit. So I'm kind of back in love with the 270 again.
Well,
But I'll move through.
it still works. I
Yeah.
don't tell anybody, but like, 30 out
it's
6 and
still a pretty
270 will
good
still
one.
kill deer. I mean,
Yeah, and it's like I'm in Texas, right? So you have all these Texas forums, and you have everybody makes fun of the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
I get it.
6.5 need more.
In my experience, it is not the cartridge. It's often a city guy that went and got a $2,000 rifle, a $2,000 scope, and then bought the cheapest ammo he could find at Academy.
Yeah, the bullets make a big difference because what we're talking about is they're not going super fast. I mean, depending on what barrel length, you're talking about, it's not a Magnum. I mean, so it's going 2,500 feet per second, and it's a smaller bullet, right? It's a lighter bullet. It's going, maybe it's a 127 to a 143, somewhere in that ballpark. And so it's not a 300 Win mag where,
Right.
you don't even have to hit the deer with a 300 Win mag. You just blow air by him and he'll fall over.
Well, you think, if you're using a copper bullet in a 6.5 Creedmoor, I mean, we're talking, it really needs to be going probably 2,300 to get the hydrostatic damage from it opening
Yep.
up, the hydrostatic shock.
Yep.
And you're going to lose that at about 350, 300, depending on, I don't have a ballistics chart in front of me. So it's
Josh,
just not
you're
going to
nailing
open
it.
up.
Like that's the deal with 6.5 Creedmoor. Here's a little secret, everybody. If you have a buddy, and I have several who are real ballistic nerds, what they find really works are bullets that hold together. So like a monolithic, like an all copper bullet, and lighter weight. The copper is inherently lighter weight, pound for pound, apples to apples.
Right.
So you can push that bullet going faster, and then you can really get some performance out of it. But yeah, you kind of have to, I mean, shot placement is everything, but I think that the 6.5 Creedmoor, there's nothing wrong with the cartridge, but you're right. A lot of people just went out and bought one, and like, that's the answer. I've had guides as well
And
tell
you
me
have
the same thing.
limitations, like, and I can remember a deer that I shot. I'll be vague to not, but the first two shots, I thought I gut shot at like 400. It was like 405 and 410. And then I have to put a follow-on shot at 125. And it was with a monolithic bullet, and it was 6.5 Creedmoor. And I didn't mean to take, I didn't go out and be like, hey, I'm going to take a 400-yard shot. It's just what happened. And I was using those monolithic bullets, and the two places I'd actually hit at the 400, I'd hit lungs, but it was just like I'd taken a pencil and just gone real slowly through those.
Yeah,
the
it's
the
too far out. It didn't
125
have
shot,
enough velocity to open up.
the 125 shot, I mean, took out both shoulders like I hit it with a with a bear rifle or something. And so, had I had a different bullet, I probably would have killed that deer in the first shot. But
It's tricky. Bullet design matters a lot.
yeah, and it's, I've, you've got the burgers and the ELDXs and, those, I love how they come apart, but then there's other things, you hit a big elk, 400 with it. It could come apart on the shoulder if you don't hit far back. So it's not a, it's not a one stop, but bullet choice. I can't tell you how many times with what I've done over the years, whether it's taking out wounded guys or taking out people and just people coming in and hunting. And I'm like, what bullet are you using? They're like, oh, 30-06. I'm like, no. What bullet? I don't know.
Yeah, they don't know.
Like that's where the rubber meets the road.
Let's be honest, Josh. If you ask them that question, they say they don't know. I'm assuming they're using a core locked. I'm assuming.
Which
killed a lot of deer, but they may not know.
But you need to know what that performance is going to do, and, do you have an AMAX? Because that's, I'm going to probably tell you don't shoot it in the shoulder if you do.
Mm-hmm.
But I could nerd out on all this stuff for a while. And it's wild how few people take into consideration that when they're like, well, I got a Night Force scope on, so it should be good.
Deer will just fall over when he sees my Night Force scope. Oh man, Josh, thanks for being on with us, dude. This has been fun.
Yeah, anytime I can talk all about, I like talking about cartridges, even things like 6.8 SPC and 300 Blackout. I've had a lot of interesting testing times out with those, and push some of those things to the limits. But probably, if I got any advice, like know what the bullet does, know what they're not all the same. Know what it does.
That's a good point. There, certain cartridges, certain bullets are designed for a specific use. They do certain things well, and they probably don't do everything well. I mean, a bullet that is going to open up, because it's a long range bullet, it's going to open up at 700 yards going 1,200 feet per second. You may not like what it does at 15 yards.
Yeah. I mean, just like if you're shooting predators and you want to keep the fur, Barnes made that varmint grenade.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic, that thing, and it's not going to exit.
Yeah.
Same thing if I'm in a room and we're in Afghanistan or Iraq and there's cinder blocks, like I don't want a monolithic bullet that's going to go through, multiple walls and hit somebody else. But
yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, and the bullet designers, they're not just punching out lead and copper and whatever. I mean, they're designing them for a purpose, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's probably the biggest thing that I see that, with people that I know that they're good shooters, they're good, good hunters. They just take it for granted. Like, oh, it's a 300 Win Mag. What does it matter?
That is the one. The 300 Win Mag is the one where people are, I'm in South Louisiana. You can't see 400 yards anywhere around here. And everybody's got a 300 Win Mag because it hits hard. I'm like, dude, you probably killed more deer with a 243 when you were younger than this 300 Win Mag now. But, whatever if you shoot it good, if you shoot that gun well, I'm fine with it. Whatever.
I know. I've been wanting to call the guys at Weatherby back. I'd really like to play around with the 257 Weatherby mag. Like
the 257 Weatherby is a frickin' laser beam.
I know. I've been desiring it.
it's so awesome. It's also, just for funsies, if you shoot steel even at like 200, 300 yards with it, it's probably going to go straight through the steel.
Yeah.
It's going that fast. It's almost it's like 4,000 feet per second. It's bonkers.
Yeah. I always remember the guys out in, we do some hunts with guys out in Wyoming, and they like shooting the 7mm STW, which is just an 8mm mag. For those that don't know, I know you do.
Yeah.
Neck down at 7. And if I'm not mistaken, with the right bullet, you have like 4 inches of drop at 300. Like it's something ridiculous like that.
I mean, I do like the whole Hunter Zero thing. Like if you have a a somewhat inherently flat shooting round, and you can sight it in at 200, 225, whatever the magic number is, and you're probably on from like 0 to 315,
Yeah.
you know, something where you don't like it, you don't, your brain doesn't have to do anything of that part. Like I'm good out to there. Past there, I'll start thinking about it. But there's a lot to be said for that when you're hunting.
Yeah, I usually like to have mine at about an inch high at 100. I know other guys like a half inch or whatever, but um, that's generally where I kind of to fall in
I
my
just lean towards I don't want to have to do a lot of extra thinking.
right.
And I mean, and I've shot a decent amount of long range shooting. I've gone to FTW several times. I've done training and all these stuff, and then know how to dial and figure out what the dope is. But when you're hunting, one, I don't want to have to remember. What if you don't remember? Right? Oh shoot, I'm dialed on at 100, and
Just like we were talking about with the ACOG.
yeah.
I mean, slightly different what you're saying, but very
And then,
similar.
you either don't think about it, or you're going, oh, and you go, oh wait, I went to 3, I didn't go to 2. Like where, like it's just, and also the animal may not cooperate of how much time you have. I always feel like as soon as you see that shooter buck or bull or whatever, there is a clock, and I don't know what the clock is. You don't know what the clock is. We don't know if it's like 5, 4, 3, or it could be 30 seconds. It could be, I've watched an antelope for a half hour trying to get him to stand up, I mean, but it could be, oh, you have 7 seconds, which is, if you're ready, 7 seconds is plenty of time. Okay. Find a rest, get on him, go ahead and press the trigger.
I have a story of and like I love you, like you said, turrets and all that. They're great, right? I was hunting with a guy. I had a buck that was coming in, and I was like, "Hey, I'd really like to shoot this buck." And we were trying to do some stuff. We were filming whatnot, and he kept like it'd be like a doe would come out at like 600 yards, and he'd dial that turret, and I was like, man, I think we need to be like just no, I do this all the time. And did it for like 5 days, and a young buck came out, and it was about 500. And he moved the turret, got it on it, and then the buck that we had been seeing walked out at 100.
Yeah.
And the nerves, he went right down, put the crosshairs on, shot over that back, and hit another buck right behind it because it shot right over it.
That's almost worse than a miss.
Yeah, and it killed it. Luckily, we're not chasing around a wounded buck, but I was like, this isn't the range.
Right.
This is not the range. And when you got time to change your diet, when you walk up and you see an elk and you're like, okay, this is what I know I got to do. My wind's this, my distance is this, and I'm going to change my. Yeah, that's it. But I don't like messing around. Playing around with stuff like that when I don't have to.
Yeah.
It was a 100-yard shot that got completely screwed up by overthinking it.
Especially if you're on a hunt for multiple days and you're messing with the turret, multiple times a day. You're like, dude, what are we even at right now? Where should that turret be?
I'm on the side of a mountain of New Zealand. Like, I don't know. Like, I can't. I've had that happen too, where you look down and you're like, oh crap, that turret is not where and the piece of tape you have is gone, and you're like, but
yeah. Oh man. Anything else you want to relay to the crowd as far as what you guys been up to SecureIt wise?
Look for us soon. The biometric locks that we have on all of our answers and agiles. And that's really cool too. If you want to show off your firearms, you can program in 30 fingerprints, but you don't have to let your kids see your combo when you're going to get a gun in and out. And if people come over, you're not showing everybody your combo. Those will be out probably after Cyber Monday, Black Friday week or whatnot. No.
Okay.
And if this is coming out Veterans Day, for everybody out there listening that's, served, thank you for your service. Not only me, but SecureIt, got its start with the military. And so veterans are near and dear to our heart. And, You know, I've got plenty of vet stories and buddies. I spent a lot of time taking out Gold Star kids and hunting and teaching them to go in the outdoors after their dads were killed. And, you know, just a lot of wounded guys as well. So I'm glad we're kind of through those combat tours, but we still, you know, really appreciate the sacrifices that all our veterans made, not just the last couple of decades, but forever.
And thank you, Josh. Thanks for your service, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. That's it for us. We will see you next time on Gun Talk Nation. Take care of yourselves. To see all of Gun Talk's content, go to guntalk.com, guntalktv.com, or sign up for the Gun Talk newsletter.